Well, Derek, I think the easiest way to do this, and it's not how I always do it, which I'm sure enrages some listeners, but let's go with chronological order. That seems to make most sense for people. Did you start as an intern in Volcom? Is that how that worked?
That's exactly how it worked. It was my first job out of college, and it wasn't even a job. It was just a friend of mine who I'd gone to school with. We were in art school together, and she was working there in the finance department, and they needed somebody to answer the phones for free. They couldn't pay, but they had some T-shirts and hats that they could give away, and I jumped on the summertime opportunity. So, and that turned into a 19-year career there.
Yeah, and you ended up as VP of Sustainability.
Yeah, that's right. So I went through a couple rounds of jobs there. I was from answering those phones, I went into order entry, kind of punching in data and stuffing envelopes and order acknowledgments. And then my first job was purchasing raw materials, so doing all the fabric and trims, and really learning domestic manufacturing of product and apparel. And from there, I went into merchandising and design, managing the designers and the planners and the product developers. And that's where I found and got turned on to sustainability and this idea of doing business better. And that really, that became my thing that I stuck with and rode that all the way to the end as, yes, the Vice President of Global Sustainability was my last role there.
Awesome. Congratulations. That sounds like a excellent journey to have with the company.
It really was. It was fun. Thank you.
Tell me what kind of went into the process of jumping into your own endeavor?
So Troy and I met there at Volcom, and Troy obviously he was there longer than I was. She's the first paid employee there, I think. And so he and I had worked together, and Troy was always really, who was my co-founding partner at Kozm, he was really supportive of the sustainability work that I was doing. And in fact, was really, I think, instrumental in helping to turn that into because he had such influence there in the company. So he knew that there was value in this, wanted to be giving back and running the company in a more meaningful way. And I think my career in that role really started when he said, hey, I think this is important, and I want you to come out to Hawaii as we're running the Volcom Pipe Pro, which is this big surf contest at one of the most, prestigious surf venues in the world on the North Shore of Hawaii. And he said, I want to, run a greener event, if you will. This was, years ago.
Cool. Yeah.
And so I found myself there on the North Shore, commenting in the commentators booth on a live webcast with legendary surfers, Jerry Lopez. And from there, I just, was like, wow. And it really became a core part of the business there. So, Troy then, when he eventually left, Volcom, he had this idea, hey, I'm out, we realized we both had a passion for yoga. Troy was on his yoga journey, longer than I was, but we had realized that we were both doing a lot of yoga. And after a few lunches, he said, hey, I've got this, I'm looking for a yoga short. I'm tired of wearing board shorts, and I can't find anything in the market that meets my sustainability hopes and meets my aesthetic criteria, is a brand that I can get behind and support, and that kind of fits my vibe, for where he came from, the surfing action sports industry. And he goes, I think there's an opportunity in the marketplace. And I think if we start a new brand, I don't want to just do another brand. It's got to be, I want it to be sustainable. I want it to be, conscious and focused on people and supply chain integrity. And he goes, and you're the guy. So why don't you come quit Volcom and come join me and let's do this? And it sounded like a great idea. So I said, all right. And off we were running.
So you guys initially started as a benefit corporation. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So we,
can you explain what that is for people listening? And then cool.
Yeah. We took sort of the checklist that I had learned from my years of as being a sustainability professional, had, kind of this playbook and said, okay, well, how do we apply it now? If we're going to start a company, let's do everything right and kind of be able to check off all the boxes. And from the way that we formed the company, so when you're a B Corp, they're kind of the same thing, but your B Corp is your B Corp certification, which means that you do an assessment, you grade yourself on all the different criteria that has to do with environmental, social, your governance, where you source your goods, how you source your goods, who your management is there diversity, is there equality, so on and so forth, right? And for every good thing that you're doing, essentially, you get points. And then the B Corp group comes in and does an audit on you, does interviews and kind of verifies that, hey, what you're saying is true. And if you reach a certain score, you reach your B Corp certification status. Your benefit corp, though, is your legal structure. kind of taking those same values that got you that score, and you're baking it into the operations of the company and kind of your bylaws and why you exist. You're kind of, you can also be a social purpose company, but Benefit Corp is tied in with that B Corp movement. And it says, hey, if we get bought, somebody else comes in and does something with us, these laws, or there's new investors, no matter what happens, these laws are baked into the company. We will always not have to be beholden to the shareholders necessarily, but our stakeholders and to people, planet, and profit as well. So it's a legal kind of binding formation of your company. You can still be like an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp, but you're registered as a Benefit Corp when you register your company.
Okay, what extra goes into that legally? Like, you have to put all those laws together, the bylaws and all that.
Yeah, you do, but it's also, I think, more of just a commitment. That part isn't too hard. You work with somebody who knows, what that means, but that's not the hardest part. I think the hardest part is then having all of your workings of your company in line so that when you take your B Corp, because then you have to immediately follow up and take your B Corp assessment within a certain amount of time. And that's where it gets tougher because there's these lists of hundreds of questions. And if you're sort of starting with nothing because you've never done anything, benefit, social, or sustainability-wise, it's going to be a real uphill battle. But the nice thing is that's your roadmap. That right there, by you deciding to do that if you now you know what you have to do to be better. So I think it's an awesome thing.
Yeah, I heard someone describe it in a little documentary I was watching as like the Benefit Corporation specifically is one of the greater legal innovations of the 21st century. Just because these corporations are like operating on software, programs, and you just change a bit of code and then they function in a more socially acceptable way. So what have been some of the biggest challenges? Just in the business space, you're taking more onto your shoulders when you do it mindfully instead of just going like, well, that's the cheapest place to get that fabric. Perfect. Now you have to visit the factory, or what all goes into it?
Yeah, so much, because it definitely is, we call it, and others will too, but it's just the slow business movement, right? Because just as you alluded to, there is always an easier, cheaper, quicker, faster way. And especially in the apparel industry, which both of us have done for so many years, we know that we can make it cheaper, and we know that we can get better margins and probably have quicker turnarounds and not have to deal with any minimums. But that is not what we set out to do, right? We set out to prove that business could be done better. So that meant kind of choosing every single, from fiber to, where we sourced our fabrics, what trims, what vendors we used. Every step of the way took a sort of pause, to say, hey, hang on. Is that going to be the right decision? Is that really what we want to do? And is that going to tell the best story? So I think the hardest part is that it's just that it's more expensive. Sustainability is not cheap. And it won't be. It's just because you're starting to, take into account all the things that we've neglected for so long, attention to chemicals and attention to wages and attention to certifications and processes and transactions and so on and so forth. So I think that's the hardest part. And it's not necessarily hard if you start that way and you know what you're looking for. What's hard is when you're trying to change your company to be a more sustainable or more thoughtful company. That's hard. Because your margins are already baked in, you've already got your costs, your supply chain is already there. For us, that's just how we built it. So the hardest part is just being a startup company in the first place and being entrepreneurial and running a business. That's the hard part, committing to the how we want to do business, to be a purpose driven and so kind of a sustainability focused brand. That's kind of the easy part. That's in our DNA now, so.
Yeah, I'd imagine that makes some of the hard part of the entrepreneurial life more digestible because you're doing it for a good reason, right? I
guess either that or sometimes you're going, oh, why are we doing this? Why have we made it so hard? Because it's true, it does. I think we're starting to see kind of this convergence where people, there may be a tipping point and maybe we're reaching a critical mass where the business community in general, en masse, kind of realizes, yes, this is important. We have to, those that are coming over, those that are saying thank you finally. but there's going to come this understanding where even the businesses that are really good at being efficient and maximizing profit and so on and so forth, we're going to meet in the middle ground, right? You've got brands like us who are just, kind of doing it on our own and gritting through it and being super committed to the values of what we've created. Well, there's this middle ground, right? Because sustainability is about people, planet, and profit.
Right.
So it does nobody any good if Kozm goes out of business in 2 years because we just couldn't thrive and survive.
Right.
So if we want to continue telling our story and be a legacy brand like Patagonia, for example, then we've got to be smart about our business as well.
The Business Roundtable, which is a big group of CEOs of companies like Walmart and Apple, they recently, I think within the past 2 or 3 weeks, came out with a statement that the definition and purpose of a corporation needs to be reinvented to take into account all stakeholders. So they're using the language that has been brought forth by like the B Corporation movement. Mm-hmm. So I think that's positive. How they bake it into their business models, we'll see. But I know the founders of the B Corp put out a big editorial, said, "Hey, we already have the way. You just have to come and we'll assess you, and then you can improve from there."
Yeah,
so, like exactly. You said, there's the critical mass that comes with awareness. How are consumers responding?
For us, really well, right? And I think that I feel like the customers that we reach, they get it. They've been waiting for it. A lot of times we get this sort of thank you. Where have you been? I'm so excited to hear. When are you going to offer more product? Like, when are you getting bigger? When can we get more from you? And I think people in general, though, appreciate, sort of this commitment that we have to traceability in our supply chain plus transparency, and then also telling you where it's coming from and trying to educate people. And sustainability is really complex, right? It's especially with apparel and any product. So you're dissecting your supply chain and realizing that in every stage of it, from cradle to gate, which is when we start selling it, and then to the grave when we ultimately throw that product away, there are like these columns that exist in there. And each of those columns in the raw materials step, for example, have all your impacts, social, environmental, and otherwise. And if it's environmental, you've got energy use and climate change and greenhouse gases and emissions and land use and eutrophication, so on and so forth. And that's just raw materials. Then you go to processing, and you keep working your way down the line to manufacturing, distribution, retail, et cetera. We've got to, trying to educate people and I guess try to make them understand that we're not just coming in with a silver bullet and saying, this is the best thing. It's like, well, here's why we do organic cotton and why we chose a natural fiber for our short, because the impacts in the raw material supply chain are really intense, and that's where most of the impacts are associated with. So it just makes good sense. So I guess the hope is that we're doing a good job communicating that. The response that we get is good. But we're not the only kind of fish in the sea. It's a good thing too that other big brands are also trying to send this message. Big brands and small brands, I should say.
Well, the supply chain reacts, right? So if there's a demand for organic cotton, then more people will be interested in growing organic cotton.
Exactly. And we need that.
So have you guys gone all the way down the line and contacted farmers? How does that work? Like how?
We haven't gone that far back. So the farthest we've gone back is for one of our main yarns. We go to the supplier, and that yarn is from Recover Yarns in Spain. And so we're able to purchase the yarns from them, and those yarns are made of upcycled cotton. So it's post-industrial cotton scrap from cutting room floors. They sort it by color, and then because their technology is then they have to mix that with recycled PET or polyester. And so it's a 50-50 blend. That polyester is dyed at the polymer level. It's called solution dyed polyester. And so then you get this great fiber. So for that part of our line, we're able to go back to the yarn, and we know where everything comes from. Our short is we're not able to go back to the farm because our volume isn't big enough. But someday, of course, that would be great. But we are able to go all the way back to the fabric. We're able to tell you, hey, this is where it comes from, but we don't have access to the farm yet from where that hemp or the organic cotton was grown yet. So that'll be our next chapter.
I'm rooting for you guys. Thank
you.
That's a huge change. And I know a lot of farmers even in America, but especially in developing countries, really live a hard life.
They do, and I was just in the last November. I was in India visiting in the Madhya Pradesh region, visiting organic farmers out there for a project that I'm working on. So I still, as an entrepreneur, I still have to hustle with my main job, and I was lucky enough to go with a client to go out there and visit the farmers. And there's some great social impact programs that we were doing out there with my former employer with Volcom. So that was a great learning lesson and opportunity just to kind of see, what it's, where our cotton's coming from and what the benefits of organic cotton are versus for these small crop farmers compared to conventional.
Right. That's amazing. What's some pieces of advice you give for anyone who's interested in entering the entrepreneurial space and wants to do it right? Like, what are some lessons you learned along the way?
I think for doing it the right way, as we're saying, it's about getting educated. And I think so, for me, having started my professional sustainability career, I don't know, it was like 2005 or 6. So it's been, a good handful of years. I learned so much along the way and working with all the different, Volcom's parent company was Caring, who has done some amazing things in the luxury space. They were the ones driving the commitment that came at the G7 summit from all the apparel industry. That was Caring's chief executive officer, Francois-Henri Pinault. But I got to work with their group for many years. I learned so much from them, learned so much from working with the Volcom team. And through Volcom too, I was able to go to all these great conferences with different nonprofits, right? Like Textile Exchange or the Sustainable Apparel Coalition or Sustainable Brands conference. And I was being lucky enough to go to those. I just continued to soak up different stories from other professionals and leaders in the space and brand stories. And the more people wanted to know from me, the more I learned. So I'm getting to your answer here with this idea of like, learning was everything for me because it positioned me as somebody who just, I guess I had a good now grasp and understanding, and I'm still not done learning of what it means to try to, account for sustainability. And I'm always asking questions, and I know that you can always dig a layer deeper, just like you did with the farms, right? It's like, well, it sounds good, but are you going back to the farm? And that doesn't always mean like shame on you. It's just sort of like, but you're asking the right questions. And so the more we learn, that's how you're going to be prepared to come into this space as to be a B Corp or a sustainable brand. Like learn everything you can about that triangle of social impact. And a lot of people, right, may or may not forget that sustainability includes the social component, the environmental side, your governance, and and then how your business runs. And then blending those two with being an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur just takes perseverance, guts, and some financial backing, and just being smart and savvy with your money.
Yeah.
Learn.
Yeah. That's the most anyone can do is learn along the way, right?
Absolutely. I'll plug real quick though too. I teach as well at a college down here in Southern California, Costa Mesa, at the Orange Coast College. I teach a sustainable fashion certificate program.
Awesome.
So I know what it can do to be able to, and that course is broken up into 3 phases, sort of this foundational sustainability knowledge, and then next semester deeper into the apparel sector and looking at really what's going on in that. And then third is we go and study brands. And even though that seems like so much for 3 different classes, it's so important to get that foundational learning of understanding the language that is used in all of the articles and the industry reports. But, now that the students have an understanding of why biodiversity is important or what an ecosystem is,
right,
or, when did climate change start, et cetera, it's been great to watch them learn and just watch them get fired up and go, okay, now you see them becoming more and more ready to go and tackle the world, whether they start a new brand or, whatever they do. They're just empowered now with this knowledge, and it works.
Are there any metrics that, I don't know if there's some third-party certification company that can look at a raw material and it just has a number associated with it? I think I was searching online a while ago to see if there was some sort of sustainability index.
There is.
Product.
There is, and it's called for at least in the apparel industry, it's called the MSI, the Materials Sustainability Index.
Oh, cool.
And that was developed by the Higg Index and the people at the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. So I think if you just search, it's like MSI.org, or just search MSI Higg Index and you'll find it. That allows you to compare, let's say, conventional cotton to recycled polyester, or recycled polyester to hemp, or organic cotton to conventional cotton. And they break it down with land use, chemicals, water use, something else, emissions, and you can see the score. And the nice thing about that tool is, for us, that Recover Yarn that I told you, it ranks as one of the lowest scores, meaning the best.
Oh, great.
So, so that was a great way for us to go, aha, we knew it was good, but there we go. Now it's in the MSI, and there's the proof, because it's basically little mini life cycle assessments on all your fiber choices.
Yeah, I have a feeling as this B Corp certification progresses and gets bigger and more popular, which it will, it's inevitable. This is just making sense for more people. I have a feeling that those sorts of indices will become more common. That should make life for the entrepreneur hopefully easier, because you'll be able to search and be like, okay, that seems like a good starting point at least.
And that's, you nailed it. That's what it is, right? It's a starting point, kind of going back to that previous topic. It's like, but you want to get to that point where you're like, okay, that still seems okay, but I still have some more questions that I want to ask. I want to keep drilling deeper. And that's what this is about. It's like, how far can we drill? And then, once you get back to the farm, well, let's look then at the operations here. What's going on here? Is everything good and right here? So yeah, you just want to keep diving, but having those good starting places, I think, is really important. And that came from industry collaboration. Collaboration is really key. Getting involved, going to joining organizations, trade groups, getting involved in the conversation, networking. Sustainability is kind of this pre-competitive space that we should all be, helping each other in. Right. And then we'll go out and battle it out as brands. That's the old way. But the new way is building it the right way.
Yeah. Compete to be the most sustainable. I think everyone wins.
Exactly. Yeah, right. And then everybody wins. Exactly.
It seems you're walking this path with integrity, and it's a noble path. You're a leader in this space, so I'm happy to be talking to you. Tell me how your yoga practice led to you interacting with the world in this way. Do you feel like your yoga practice has helped you? Like, in the entrepreneurial space, or just developmentally?
I think it has helped me. So my sustainability journey started first, and I was always a surfer. So that was my kind of fit. And, I watched Inconvenient Truth. That was my first. Okay. Before any social ecology class in college, I had one, right? All my years going back to my MBA, nobody mentioned sustainability aside from one social ecology class in my first year of college. So then I watched Inconvenient Truth in 2006 or something, and just went, boom, there you go. I'm changing my path. Okay. So I had already kind of been turned on. I found yoga much later. I found yoga from getting injured and needing something to do, and having my doctor say, like, hey, you gotta go a little bit lighter on yourself. Why don't you just do some yoga or something? And luckily at Volcom, they started doing these lunchtime yoga classes, and the teacher was awesome. She's still a friend of ours. And I just got hooked. And cool. I just kept learning and learning and learning. So what yoga has helped me do, though, so I feel like I always had that kind of time for myself with surfing, and being connected to nature and finding stillness out there and being just at peace with myself for a good couple of hours or whatever it was. But yoga has deepened that commitment to making time for myself and understanding how to approach life and being an entrepreneur and the journey of learning. And it's this idea that the journey is never done, right? And every time to your mat is this new experience, whether you're doing the same flow or not, it's always different. And when it gets difficult, you breathe through it, you stay calm, and you focus on yourself. So I feel like yoga has, I think, allowed me to, because there's a lot of things I've thrown on my plate as an entrepreneur. Right. And, so it allows me a lot of times to like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And probably the answer I should give. It's like surfing and yoga and a really supportive wife, you know? So yeah, I guess, I don't know. I love just the analogy of how yoga, how you can connect, how it mirrors life, right? It can get really tough. But as long as you just stay focused, stay committed to yourself, focus on your breath, turn within, eliminate distractions, and make it all the way till the end. You know, it's like, that's what drives me. Like right now, I'm really in this zone of like, I've got these goals. I want to get there. I want Kozm to be what it can be. And, I've got a lot of hopes that I strive for. So yoga helps fuel me and it's helping me get there.
Great. That's beautiful. Thank you for your time tonight, Derek. I appreciate you. It's
Thank you.
Interesting story, and I think you guys are doing the Lord's work. The more voices like yours that are out there and setting the example, the better. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm humbled by your words.